to name this Eurostar train the Da Vinci Code train. Here you are. You can do it.
Okay, the Da Vinci Code train.
Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
We're in history, we're living it, and today we're going to try to break the record and enter the Guinness Book of World Records. This is going to be the fastest, the longest international train journey ever recorded, if we make it.
Hi, I'm Ian McKellen. This is a very special edition of Moviefone's Unscripted because I'm on a train and I'm going to Cannes, to the film festival, to celebrate the world premiere of Ron Howard's latest movie, the Da Vinci Code. Ever heard of that? And guess what? He's right here. And I'm going to ask him some questions, some of my own and some that you've sent in. So I guess it's going to work, Ron.
We'll give it a go.
This is the first question. How difficult is it to make a film from a book that so many people are already familiar with?
Well, you know, every movie's difficult. For some reason or another. I've done a lot of films where you're dealing with factual matters, and you have to try to decide which elements of this person's life story you're going to apply to the movie. And I felt there was a similar kind of responsibility in a way to the novel. And you know, we spent a lot of time talking during rehearsals about the book and what elements of it were imperative and which could be condensed. And it was just, it was definitely a challenge.
Do you think it's easier if there's nobody in the audience who knows what the outcome of the movie is, whereas in our case, a lot of people think they know the answer?
Well, I think one of the things that I feel is that when people go to see, a movie from a very popular novel, I think they tend to lean back and sort of watch it, and they're almost doing a kind of a compare and contrast paper in their mind. It's almost an essay. It's almost like they've got a checklist. And of course, I as a director want to make films that just draw people into the story, and so that they lose themselves. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do with the Da Vinci Code, knowing that that was going to be the case, and it may or may not have succeeded in defeating that, for the large majority of people, but one of the ways to go at it in my mind was get great actors, and do the one thing with the movie that you can't do with the book, and that's not allow these characters to become chess pieces, but make them really fascinating, living, breathing characters. And that's, we spent all that work in rehearsal doing all of that work.
And it's always so thrilling, isn't it? If you've got a favourite book, turned into a movie, and somewhere halfway through, or maybe earlier than that, you, as an audience, totally accept what the director and the actors have done with it, and you think, oh, I'm in safe hands, it's going to be okay.
I'm just going to go with that.
I bet there are a lot of rather nervous millions of people around the world waiting for the next Wednesday, whatever it is.
So, along the same lines, how difficult is it to bring a character to life from a book, which is so popular, knowing that that character has been imagined by so many people?
Well, now, Lord of the Rings, I played a character that people have been reading about for 50 years.
Right.
Everybody thought they knew Gandalf.
Right.
And we worked out quite early on, before we started the movie, they probably didn't know Gandalf as well as we had, because we'd really examined the text. But what we based the look of Gandalf on was not Tolkien's description, which was pretty wild. The real Gandalf has eyebrows that go beyond the brim of his very big hat.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Right.
What we did, we made our Gandalf look like the illustrations to the books, which had been used for about 20 years. So actually, I wasn't playing Tolkien's Gandalf at all. I was playing Alan Lee's Gandalf. Anyway,
how interesting.
Never mind. In this case, not too many people will object, but I don't actually look much like the description.
When we first met, that was one of the things that you said.
Well, because Lee Teabing is described by the author Dan Brown as being rather round and short and I think bald with a lot of red hair.
Right. More like me.
What went wrong? I could have directed this. Anyway. But somebody came to me the other day and, having seen a bit of a preview of the movie, said, "Ian, you're exactly as I always imagined."
Oh, isn't that great?
So I'm feeling quite confident.
Yeah, I thought, I vaguely remembered the description because one of the things that I said about, doing it was, again, trying to cast actors that I felt could, sort of take the character, build upon the character and the possibilities of the character. So I wanted great actors. But there was a kind of an essence. So I went with sort of the feeling that I had from the characters based on the novel.
It's the inner life, isn't it?
The inner life.
Yeah. But we should tell the audience that we do go back to the book the whole time, don't we? We're always checking up, have we got this right?
Absolutely.
Is this how Dan Brown imagined it? Can we reproduce that? And if we can't, then there's a good reason not to. But
on into the shooting, we were doing that constantly.
Exactly. Can I ask you, when you were acting,
right?
You started very early on, didn't you?
4 years old.
Ridiculous. So, were your teen years all about how am I going to get out of this dreadful trap my parents have got me into? In other words, were you always expecting or hoping you might direct? And is it the end, or are you really now dying to get back to acting?
That's more than one question.
Sorry.
But, no, well, I wanted... First of all, I really liked acting when I was a kid, and as a teen, I was still really very much enjoying it. And I think one of the reasons why that I made the transition and stayed with the business and have had a kind of a healthy relationship with the business all along is because I always did like it. So I didn't go through an awkward adolescent period of, God, I'm trapped in this, but it seems to be the only thing I can do. I like the process. Now, early on, I decided that I thought my personality was better suited. I didn't really have a performer's personality. I was really interested in the work that was going on behind the camera and that sort of the taking the responsibility for telling the story and on sort of in all the categories. And it became a real obsession. By the time I was 15, I was determined that I wanted to be a director, but it was more out of love for the medium.
Did you have a little camera?
I had cameras. I made, and I started editing together. Editing, very important for young filmmakers.
Film or video?
Well, this was film. This was before video. Now video is perfect. But it does. I think that editing is something that young filmmakers really need to focus on, and writing, and acting, by the way, whether they have any interest in ever pursuing it professionally or not. So Ian, I have a question for you.
Good.
A question I would have been a little self-conscious to ask when we first began working, but I've been curious about this and your process. You give these wonderfully dimensional performances, whether it's on stage or on screen, and I've seen you all kinds of characters. But you were, from the very beginning, very, very interested in the physicality of Teabing, and that was one of the very first things that we talked about.
Yeah.
The limp. What would it? How impaired was he? What would the props be around Teabing? These things you were very interested in. And then we would get into story discussions, and you were very concerned and interested about the sort of inner logic of the character and the psychology. So I see two approaches, and I'm kind of wondering, which one comes first for you, the physicality or the psychology? And how does it evolve?
Ron, if I knew that, I'd probably have written a best-selling book on acting. I wouldn't still have to be doing it anymore. I'm not actually. I don't know how I act. Really. I never went to drama school. I never picked up a method. However, I don't know that the two things you're talking about are actually contradictory. Alec Guinness, the great English film actor, said he always began with the shoes. If he knew what the character was wearing on his feet, he would know how the character walked. And I've held on to that because everybody walks differently, and most actors don't bother about the walk. They always walk the same.
The way they walk.
That's right. Now, people don't walk the same, and they don't speak the same, and they have different accents. That's obvious. Now, I'm useless at accents. Useless. I can only play British people on the whole. So I concentrate on what I can do something about, which is my feet. And Teabing, of course, has a big problem with his feet because he can't use them.
Right.
He's on the crutches. And once I start doing something physical, and say to myself, that is how Teabing walks.
Right.
Or this is how Gandalf's age affects his shoulders. Once I've got one thing about the character, then I can build on it. It's just some reassurance. We've got that right. And once you've got that right, then we can build and then start worrying about what's going on inside his head and so on.
Well, your performances are so nuanced and so interesting, and as from a directorial standpoint, you know, while you're incredibly well prepared, no two takes are ever exactly the same. There's always something alive.
That's all right, though, isn't
that's
it?
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yes. I learned that from Ian Holm quite recently on Lord of the Rings, and he does every take differently.
Right.
And I said, what are you up to? Don't you know what you're doing? He said, well, I don't quite, but he said, he thinks his job is to give the director everything that Ian Holm, the actor, can discover about the character, give it all, put it all on the screen, then the director can build the character and the performance. So that's sort of right, isn't it?
Well, you certainly gave me a lot to work with.
Oh, well, that's not.
So thank you to Moviefone.
Yes, and thank you for watching us. And it's au revoir, isn't it? As we're in France. And hope you enjoy the movie.
The French countryside hurtling by. Take care.